Ah, it's nice to be king.
King of what castle?
The one you're standing on. Here, why don't you let me show you around? Ladies, gentlemen, and pals of all ages, are you tired of coming up with incredible base-based creations in your head, dreams of efficient production lines or perfect mining setups, or just the perfect beach house to take in the waves and the sun? No matter what your purpose of a base, everyone always feels like their base could be at least a little bit better, right? So today we're going to go over and combine various bits of knowledge that we've talked about in different base effectiveness guides, as well as adding in some newer tips and tricks we've not discussed like this before, and use that to create pretty much just the optimal, effective, efficient, perfect 3-base setup, as we only have 3 to play around with as far as slots, so it matters quite a bit. First off, let's start with the old classic. I've been singing the praises of this location for an incredibly long time now, it feels like, but this spot here on the map is a relatively early game area that is just a nice high up plateau that is almost the perfect shape for a base, and it is also just absolutely loaded to the brim with both coal and ore nodes. And this is going to be your mining base, for obvious reasons, at least your main mining base. This location is just so full of goodies that you can endlessly mine these materials between their reset spawn times, and it's just sort of a well-oiled machine doing so. But we're going to take this even a step further than we normally would, and what we're going to do is actually expand this outwards and upwards so that it fills multiple roles at the same time. If you build foundations out on the side of the plateau that doesn't have rocks, you can then start building a full-on stone structure on this side of the cliff. The way this building works in the game, roofs are allowed to stick out further than the foundation that is below them. So we build the foundation out, and then we're going to make ourselves a higher up floor. You want pals to be able to travel freely up and down, so building the staircase 3 stairs wide and the walls 3 walls high makes it able to fit any pal in the game without issues. From here you can build out the second floor, and here's where it gets fun, because now with all this extra space that pals can freely travel to, you can add all of your means of production up here, which is fantastic, as of course this is also your mining base, which means that now you can do all of your producing, even with plenty of spare space, all within the same shared storage space. I put pretty much everything here far from each other. You could fit a lot more in here than I have currently, and condensing all these different functional things down into one base means that you just get a whole lot of freedom with what you do with your other 2 base slots. Generally speaking, I would recommend your second base is actually another mining base, but this time right over here near the middle of the volcano. We've talked about this spot before too, and this is the best sulfur mining base location in the game. It's right beside a pool of lava, sure, but you can build foundations over that to make it somewhat inhabitable, as long as you put in staircases on either side of the foundations to make it so pals can travel up and down as needed. This spot has a whopping 9 sulfur nodes in the radius, and just a token ore node as just a nice bonus. All in all, this is my top recommendation for a second mining base if you're going to use that slot for that, but I would say that your second slot is sort of a free space, more of a wild card. You could use it for this if you really want a nice supply of sulfur sort of forever, or you could even use this slot just as a base that is exclusively your own home, not even really caring about having pals there at all, because we take care of most of our needs from the other 2 base slots as far as actual efficiency. It's worth mentioning that you can technically build a second pal box just outside the radius of your first one as well, and treat it as one big base if you want to do something fancy like that. Combine 2 of the base slots together, but any pals will of course be locked to their respective side of the 2 bases and cannot interact with anything at the other bases nearby, but it is an option if you want to do it for aesthetic reasons, I suppose. That said, personally, I prefer spreading my bases around into places that don't have great teleport locations near them, which is why the 3rd base location specifically I'm recommending is right over here, this cliff coming off of the right side of the Astral Mountains. It's a unique climate where it does not count as freezing temperatures over here. It's absolutely miles from any normal teleport waypoint in the rest of the game, which means that this base will actually serve you very well even just for transportational purposes. And it's just a nice, wide, relatively flat area. And of course, the final type of base that I recommend making in this location is a breeding base. This can be relatively simple, or you can really build it up to be an absolute menacing skyscraper of breeding like I have. Obviously, when it comes to breeding, you need a breeding farm. This will use up 2 of your pal slots to actually have in it at a time, but you could make a super efficient version of this breeding process that lets you breed up to 10 pairs of pal at the same time, using every single pal slot that is available in the base with the world settings up for one purpose, which is effective and efficient breeding. If you take care of all of your cake production requirements over at the new mining production base we talked about earlier, and it definitely does fit there with the way that we built it, there is tons of extra space. You don't need a single pal at your breeding base to have any purpose that isn't actually just breeding in itself, so this actually works out extremely well. Again, we take these same principles here, 3 walls high, 3 staircases wide, but but if your pals are only here to breed, it doesn't technically matter, as with recent patches, pals that are breeding will never actually leave the pen that they are assigned to unless you manually make them stop breeding. So technically you don't even need the stairs if you don't want to have them. I just have them like this for ease of use more than anything else. I even overcrafted breeding farms just to make it look sort of silly and a bit higher than it needs to be. So yes, this is a slight exaggeration of what is actually the most effective and efficient because I've overdone it, as you could definitely fit it all into 2 floors instead of 3 like I did here. But I wanted to make a point with this, which is that vertical space in this game is just something that people heavily underutilize in their bases in Palworld, and you should absolutely think a bit more about using this vertical space. Hell, forget all the extra breeding farms that I have up here. You could put your own actual living quarters, your proper house, up here at the top of this. Keep all the Pal related stuff downstairs below you, and then build your own penthouse estate at the top that only you need to access personally. Maybe put in like a helipad for landing your flying pal, that type of thing. You just make it really nice and cool. You get the idea. Another option as far as houses that I like is because generally if you are building a house for yourself, you don't really need pals going in it anyways, nor do you necessarily want that. They don't tend to function well with doors in the first place, so it makes it hard for them to do it even if you wanted them to, and there's nothing house-wise that actually requires pals to function, which means that specifically if you're in a single player server or a private one hosted by some friends or something like that, you can change the world setting that is called structure degradation rate to 0. This allows you to build structures and foundations literally anywhere in the game without fear of them breaking. As with default settings, structures will simply lose health over time and implode if they are built outside of the base range, so you cannot do this normally. But if you turn this setting down to 0, you can just sort of build your house off of your base, just a little bit off with a little path leading to it, something nice like that, or even just build it somewhere completely irrelevant to the location of any of your bases if you really want to as well. The world's your oyster as far as base locations, as far as house locations specifically, I suppose, once this setting is off. So that's pretty much everything, honestly. The 3 bases that you want, the locations I specifically recommend for each one of them, and how I've got all of them set up. The ore and coal mining base is honestly just a must-have. It's just far too efficient, especially in that location, and perfect for 2 heavily required materials. And with the extension of fitting your production in here too, it just works out incredibly well as a use of a single base slot. The sulfur base I think is incredible if you have need for loads of sulfur, which a lot of people do, unless you want to just, buy your ammo. Otherwise, honestly, use it as a wildcard slot. Do whatever you want with it because the only other necessary separate base setup is sort of the breeding base, or the breeding skyscraper, if you want to call it that for the monstrosity I've set up for pure efficiency that I don't even have walls on, so I can actually show you how it looks from the outside, and how I've set that up so that we can have 10 pairs of pals breeding simultaneously for absolutely ridiculous egg production rates that let you condense pals in a minuscule fraction of the time that it would normally take if you don't do this. I hope you all enjoyed this, and hopefully you've come away with it with either a plan to take this advice directly into your own game, or maybe you've just gotten some ideas for how to expand the bases that you personally prefer and locations you just like for aesthetic reasons. There's no wrong way to play the game or to build your bases, but this set of 3 is pretty much peak efficiency if that's what you're looking for, and I know a lot of us only really care about having one base for aesthetics, so hopefully this helps out for your others. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.